Nothing robs us of freedom like the pursuit of approval. Dr. Richard Leahy said this, and this is stunning, sad but true. The average high school kid today has the same level of anxiety and depression as the average psychiatric patient in the early 1950s. And social media is a huge reason for this. I mean, huge. We're constantly comparing, looking for likes, measuring our worth based on approval ratings. I mean, imagine how free you'd feel if the opinions of others didn't have such a hold on you. Think about that. If what other people thought of you didn't have such a hold on you, think about how liberating that would be, how freeing that would be. You would feel so much freer to say what you want to say, be who you want to be. But the opinions of others seems to drive us. The opinions of others typically dictates what we decide to let people see and what we conceal. And so our slavery to what other people think of us encourage us to wear masks, to put our best foot forward, to be a little less real, to maybe tell a little less truth about ourselves, because we're so fearful that if people really knew us, they'd walk away. They'd reject us. And that dictates so much of what we decide to do or what we decide not to do. I mean, living for the approval of others is the epitome of slavery. It is anti-freedom to the core. To the core. Ray Ortlund, a friend of mine, put it like this: human approval is divided. Some like you, others dislike you. A split vote. Who can you believe? Human approval is shallow. None of them know your deepest heart. What if they did? What would they do? Human approval is distorted. Your friends overlook many failings. Your enemies can't see anything right with you. How do you sort it all out? Human approval is unsatisfying. The deep need of your heart for approval goes far beyond anything another flesh and blooder can say or do. In other words, the deep longing for approval that all of us have inside of us can never be fully satisfied, no matter how much approval we get from other people. But as enslaving as living for human approval is, and I think we all believe that it is, there is an even deeper slavery. A slavery that the Apostle Paul spends this entire letter addressing. Some people say, don't worry about what others think of you. You should only worry about what God thinks of you. Don't live to please others, live to please God. As if that's supposed to be a relief, okay? I mean, living to gain the approval of others, as enslaving as that is at least theoretically possible. Living to gain God's approval is absolutely impossible. Now, let me remind you that God only accepts perfection. That's it. That's all he accepts. Anything slightly less than perfect, he rejects. He has to. He's holy. He's perfect. Well, that's a bit of a problem for us because none of us are perfect. So if you're trying to get God's approval by what you do or don't do, you're consigning yourself to living on a performance treadmill that will never get you one step closer to where you need to be, which is not only exhausting, but incredibly discouraging. Incredibly. Well, let me tell you why Jesus came, okay? Let me just put it right out there. Jesus himself tells us why he came. He didn't come to make you good, okay? He didn't. He didn't come to make you nice. He came to free you from the slavery of trying to get God's approval. That's why he came. He did all the right things, the perfect things, the nice and good things, the required things that we couldn't do for us. He pleased God for us. I've said before that two words that I like to use to describe the essence of Christianity is simply for us. God doesn't accept our incremental transformation. He accepts Christ's substitution. Jesus did all the right things. He did all the perfect things. What did he say in the Sermon on the Mount? I haven't come to abolish the standards, the law. I've come to fulfill it. And then that fulfillment, all the right stuff, the perfect stuff, the good and nice stuff, the required stuff that we couldn't do, he did. And then he takes all of that and he deposits it into our bankrupt account so that we now have the perfect rightness, niceness, goodness, perfection, cleanliness of Jesus cloaked around us. And that is why our relationship to God can be unconditional. Jesus met all of God's perfect conditions for us so that our relationship to God could be unconditional. This is what Hebrews 11:6 means when it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. And so a lot of us read that verse. I know I did for many years, and we think, okay, I get it. So I have to be faithful in order to please God. But that's not what it says. It simply says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Well, what does it mean? If it doesn't mean that we have to be faithful in order to please God, what does it mean? And then, of course, we assign definitions to faithfulness, like being nice and being good and reading your Bible for an hour a day and praying as often as you possibly can and make sure that you're in church all the time. And we sort of put these definitions to what faithfulness looks like. We put a to-do list of faithfulness together for ourselves, and then we strive to accomplish that to-do list thinking that that's what pleases God. But that's not what it says. What it says is that pleasing God isn't about what we do. It's about trusting in the one who alone pleased God. Faith. He's not talking about our faithfulness. He's talking about faith in the one, trust, belief in the one who alone pleased God for us. It's about faith in the one who not only pleased God for us, but it's about faith in the one who did all that was necessary in order for us to have God's approval forever. See, pleasing God isn't about behavior, it's about belief. Believing, like I said a minute ago, that Jesus met all of God's perfect conditions so that our relationship to God could be perfectly unconditional. So Paul says it's a fool's errand to live your life trying to please others. That's slavery. Slavery. It creates tension, anxiety, stress. But there's a much deeper slavery than that Paul addresses, and that's the deep slavery of trying to gain God's approval by what we do, by who we become, by what we don't do, and those sorts of things. You see, real slavery is living your life trying to gain favor, either from others or God. Real freedom is living your life because you already have favor, already have it. Deep freedom happens when the affirmation you look for from others is replaced by the affirmation you already have from God.